In December 1984, a package with no return address and an Albuquerque postmark arrived in Jamie Shandera's mail in North Hollywood, California. Inside was a roll of 35mm film. When developed, it turned out it contained 8 pages of an alleged briefing paper dated November the 18th of 1952, in which Vice Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter told President-elect Dwight Eisenhower of the recovery of the remains of 2 crashed spaceships. In the first of these crashes, in early July 1947, authorities recovered the bodies of 4 humanoid beings. According to the document, which appended a copy of what was supposed to be the actual executive order, President Harry Truman authorized the creation of a super-secret group called Majestic 12, or MJ-12 for short, to study the remains. Acting on a tip from sources who claimed to represent Air Force intelligence, Shandera and his associate William Moore, co-author of the Roswell incident, flew to Washington, D.C. They searched the National Archives looking for references in official documents to MJ-12. They found a July 1954 memo from General Robert Cutler, an Eisenhower assistant, referring to an MJ-12, or Special Studies Project, to be held at the White House on the 16th of that month. When this document was released in May of 1987, it sparked massive controversy. The document is believed by some to be a hoax, but the identity and motive of the perpetrator remains unknown. In the spring of 1987, an unknown individual, allegedly associated with an intelligence agency, gave British writer Timothy Good a copy of the MJ-12 document. Upon learning Good was going to disclose its existence to the press, Moore and Shandera released their copy, along with the Cutler memo. The result was a massive uproar, including coverage in the New York Times and Nightline, an FBI investigation, and furious controversy that continues to this day. Operation Majestic 12, or Magic 12, was allegedly a program created after the infamous Roswell crash in 1947. Majestic 12 was a collection of top brass, military generals, and government officials coalesced under the orders of President Truman to investigate the crash and decide the best course of action to deal with the situation. The group put together a series of documents on its discoveries as a briefing for the incoming President Eisenhower. These documents supposedly detailed the recovery of the craft, the extraterrestrial entities on board, and photographic evidence of the crash. Conspiracy theorists claimed that it was created under the recommendation of then Secretary of Defense James Forrestal and Dr. Vannevar Bush, then chairman of the Office of Scientific Research and Development. The documents were highly classified and labeled Majestic Eyes Only, a security classification supposedly 2 levels above or higher than top secret. If proven to be legitimate, they would confirm all conspiracies surrounding the Roswell crash in New Mexico, as well as the long-running suspicion that the government has been holding information about extraterrestrial contact from the public. But when put under scrutiny, the authenticity of many of the reports becomes questionable, while the shady associations of players involved in the story also casts a shadow of doubt. The government, in this scenario, responded to the veracity of the documents by reviewing them and literally labeling them bogus in large block letters. This was the verdict declared by the FBI after the documents were reviewed by the Air Force 4 years after their discovery. The Majestic 12 documents came in the form of undeveloped film, randomly mailed to a filmmaker, Jamie Shandera, in 1984. The documents displayed in the images after Shandera developed the film have been researched by Stanton Friedman, one of the more prominent names in ufology, and he maintains their integrity till the day he died. Curiously, whoever sent the pictures of the documents to Shandera waited until the last supposed member of Majestic 12 passed away, eliminating the chance to question members as to their involvement. But some of the members of the group had directly been involved with groups like NICAP and Project Blue Book, government operations charged with investigating the UFO phenomenon. A memo from alleged MJ-12 member General Nathan F. Twining has become one of the more credited documents in ufology. This genuine letter, sent to a fellow general, contains a request for research into the UFO phenomenon following the Roswell incident. But even though the government has labeled the MJ-12 documents bogus, a report by Nick Redford, another ufologist who has tirelessly investigated the MJ-12 files, states that there were several FBI investigations of the files in the late 80s. Some of these investigations led agents to believe that there could be a highly classified MJ-12 program that was being kept from them. One agent even stated that there are so many secret levels within the government that even the government isn't aware of it. The MJ-12 consists of an array of Air Force generals, naval rear admirals, and government bureaucrats. Some have speculated that the name Majestic 12, the alternative name for the Majestic 12, is actually an acronym for Military Assessment of the Joint Intelligence Committee. One of these members, Roscoe H. Hillenkotter, is the specific subject of a letter pertaining to the conspiracy known as the Hillenkotter Memo. Hillenkotter was originally a rear admiral in the Navy, but then became director of Central Intelligence and the first director of the CIA. After Shandera received the roll of film containing images of the Majestic 12 documents, he set out on the investigation with Bill Moore, author of the Roswell incident. While digging through archives of government and military memos, they stumbled across one of Hillenkotter's memos that read, "The President has decided that the MJ-12 SSP briefing should take place during the already scheduled White House meeting of July 16th, rather than following it as previously intended. More precise arrangements will be explained to you upon arrival. Please alter your plans accordingly. Your concurrence to the above change of arrangements is assumed." The legitimacy of this document has been highly touted by Stanton Friedman. Hillenkotter is also said to have briefed Eisenhower on the recovery of spacecraft at Roswell and the subsequent contact with extraterrestrials. But are the Majestic 12 documents real? What makes the story of the Majestic 12 seem spurious is the association between Shandera and Bill Moore. Moore came out to the public as having colluded with a government agent to spread disinformation about UFOs, despite being a ufologist himself. The disinformation agent was Richard Doty, the CIA agent tasked with feeding phony stories about UFOs and extraterrestrials to Paul Bennewitz when he became convinced of their existence in the 1980s. Benowitz had been working as a contractor at the Kirkland Air Force Base in New Mexico, being privy to clandestine military programs that the government didn't want him to expose. He believed he had been seeing UFOs, so the government convinced him of phony extraterrestrial conspiracies, driving him to the brink of insanity. Linda Moulton Howe is another proponent of the MJ-12 documents, claiming to have been shown evidence of a Majestic 12-related project, Aquarius, and a presidential briefing describing UFO crashes and extraterrestrial contact. However, she too was given this information from Doty. Howe was preparing a documentary at the time for HBO after her famous production of Strange Harvest, hoping to incorporate a significant amount of film from Doty as well as an interview with him, but it never materialized, and HBO pulled funding from the documentary. Recently, however, a batch of new documents has surfaced that was thought to be legitimate by those who still have vested belief in the program. The document, dated 8th January 1989, states that the government found 7 flying craft in the bodies of 27 deceased non-human species. The document also claims that 3 of the recovered craft were nearly intact, and 1 machine has maintained power since its discovery. It goes on to lay out the history of the Roswell crash and the members of the Majestic 12 papers. Although the authenticity of these recent Majestic 12 documents has been debunked by Howe and most of her colleagues, Stanton Friedman is one of few who maintains their integrity, but much of the format and verbiage in the documents proves to obviously be fake. But who is behind these recent documents that has gone to such length to perpetuate an already convoluted story? Whether the creator of the documents could very well be a hoaxer with a lot of extra time, there's also evidence that government disinformation campaigns could be at work to muddy the waters. This is the greater issue that upsets the community of ufologists who continue to search for answers, but can see past the mediocrity of documents like these. This same campaign that was propagated by Richard Doty and William Moore that drove Paul Benowitz mad may be continuing to this day. Is the government concealing evidence of extraterrestrial technology and contact? Probably, but the disinformation campaigns that have been proven are not only deceptive to the public, but have ruined the lives of some who are simply seeking the truth. Everyone knows the story of the alien craft that supposedly crashed in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. But who was appointed to deal with it? According to ufology diehards, it was a group known as the Majestic 12, and there are top-secret documents to prove it. The FBI says the whole story is bogus. The relevant files can be easily accessed on the FBI's website, and nothing in there has been redacted. But no matter how many times the Majestic 12 case gets debunked, true believers stay interested. Mark Finster, author of Conspiracy Theories, Secrecy and Power in American Culture, has done extensive research into modern-day conspiracy theories, including those surrounding 9/11. He points out that the enduring appeal of the Majestic 12 has to do with the government's response. If you wanted to bluff as the FBI, you would redact nothing, he says. To believers, the story of Majestic 12, also known as MJ-12 or Magic, goes back to 1947. But as far as supposed hard evidence is concerned, it begins in 1984. Documentary producer Jamie Shandera is said to have been reading a magazine at home when a mysterious envelope was dropped through his mail slot. This is the envelope with film of the documents. The pictures were not of people or places or aliens, but of 8 pages of classified documents. While they weren't exactly the candid shots of an alien autopsy that Shandera and Moore had likely hoped for, the top secret pages told an explosive story that, if true, not only confirmed the Roswell incident, but also detailed the people behind its research and cover-up. The most prominent file, dated in 1952, described a number of UFO encounters, including the Roswell crash from '47 on to the 1950s. While these descriptions all seem vague enough to be easily dismissed, the real gold in the document was the revelation that President Truman had appointed a committee of scientists, government officials, and military men, the Majestic 12, to figure out just how to deal with the Roswell crash and any other alien incursions that might occur in the future. These were the original Men in Black. According to the documents, members of the original MJ-12 included Dr. Vannevar Bush, an inventor, engineer, and head of the U.S. Office of Scientific Research and Development during World War II, retired Admiral Sidney Sowers, the first director of the CIA, and Dr. Donald Menzel, theoretical astrophysicist and avid UFO debunker. Shandera and Moore would spend years trying to verify and validate the documents that had fallen into their lap, while word of the Majestic 12 spread among ufologists and believers. The existence of a secret government cabal working to hide and control our first contact with extraterrestrials was just too juicy to stay buried. The document's claims began to take hold, both in the ufology community and in the larger culture it touched, worming its way into the standard alien conspiracy narrative. But the seemingly incriminating documents didn't hold water for long. Prominent members of the ufology community began to point out flaws and inconsistencies in the alleged top-secret papers. Among the many issues that have been raised regarding the Majestic 12 documents are some incorrect ranks assigned to the members of the group, odd formatting that didn't match with standard government briefs of that vintage, and some anachronistic verbiage, specifically the use of the term media as opposed to the term press. The most damning issue with the Majestic 12 documents was their origin. None other than Carl Sagan himself denounced the documents in his book, The Demon-Haunted World: Science as a Candle in the Dark. Where the MJ-12 documents are most vulnerable and suspect is exactly on this question of provenance. The evidence miraculously dropped on a doorstep like something out of a fairy story, perhaps The Shoemaker and the Elves, he wrote. Moore soon became the presumed perpetuator of the hoax. As the central figure behind the dissemination of the documents, it was assumed that he had simply had them forged. By the late 1980s, the FBI and the Air Force had gotten wind of the Majestic 12 documents and launched investigations into their veracity, mainly trying to determine whether someone was disseminating classified documents. The Air Force Office of Special Investigations looked into the matter before handing it over to the FBI around 1988. Their investigators were able to determine that the pages were bunk. In its final assessment on the MJ-12 documents, an FBI official wrote, the document is completely bogus. To drive the point home, the word bogus was then scrawled across the filed documents in giant capital letters. It's almost as if the FBI is sick of talking about MJ-12, or more likely was not quite sure how to respond. If you don't respond, then it seems as though you're confirming the conspiracy theorists, and you're leaving these theories out there, said the FBI. But if you do respond, you can't truly debunk the conspiracy theory, and you're giving it more oxygen. There's almost no way to successfully respond to it. Still, the Majestic 12 live on. There are those in the ufology community, such as prominent voice Stanton Friedman, who still believed that the documents are real and continued to argue the point of them till his death. There have even been further documents that have surfaced claiming to support the originals, but none have gained such a strong response. In a more broad sense, the Majestic 12 seem to be thoroughly ingrained into the larger UFO narrative at this point, appearing in some form or another in shows like The X-Files and movies like Men in Black. Even if the truth isn't in the Majestic 12 documents, some people still seem to want to believe it. UFO conspiracy theories argue that various governments and politicians globally, most especially the officials of Washington, D.C., are suppressing evidence of extraterrestrial, unidentified flying objects and alien visitors. Such conspiracy theories commonly argue that Earth governments, especially the government of the United States, are in communication or cooperation with extraterrestrials, despite public claims to the contrary, and further that some of these theories claim that the governments are explicitly allowing alien abduction. Individuals who have publicly stated that UFO evidence is being suppressed include Senator Barry Goldwater, British Admiral Lord Hill Norton, formerly of NATO and head of the Chief of the British Defence Staff, Brigadier General Arthur Exon, the former commanding officer of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, Vice Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkotter, the first CIA director, astronauts Gordon Cooper and Edgar Mitchell, and former Canadian Defense Minister Paul Hillier. As recent as 2013, Senator Mike Gravel claimed that the government was suppressing evidence of extraterrestrials. Philip James Corso served in the United States Army from February 23rd of 1942 to March 1st of 1963 and earned the rank of Lieutenant Colonel. Corso was on the staff of President Eisenhower's National Security Council for 4 years, from 1953 to 1957. In 1961, he became chief of the Pentagon's Foreign Technology Desk in Army Research and Development, working under Lieutenant General Arthur Trudeau. He was highly decorated and trusted. Corso published The Day After Roswell in 1997 about his alleged involvement in the research of extraterrestrial technology recovered from the 1947 Roswell UFO incident. On July 23rd of 1997, he was a guest on the popular late-night radio show Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell, where he spoke live about his Roswell story. Corso died of a heart attack less than a year later. In his book, The Day After Roswell, Corso claims he stewarded extraterrestrial artifacts recovered from a crash near Roswell, New Mexico in 1947. Corso says a covert government group was assembled under the leadership of Admiral Roscoe H. Hillenkotter, the first director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Among its tasks was to collect all information on off-planet technology. The U.S. administration simultaneously discounted the existence of flying saucers in the eyes of the public. According to Corso, the reverse engineering of these artifacts indirectly led to the development of accelerated particle beam devices, fiber optics, lasers, integrated circuit chips, and Kevlar material. In the book, Corso claims that the Strategic Defense Initiative, SDI, or Star Wars, was meant to achieve the destructive capability of electronic guidance systems in incoming enemy warheads, as well as the disabling of enemy spacecraft, including those of extraterrestrial origin. Not only did Corso claim to have seen an alien body from Roswell, but also secret Pentagon files regarding the incident. He stated that the Pentagon had the bodies of aliens shipped to the Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C. Autopsies were done on the dead aliens. He also tells us that America's best was stumped by the extraordinary technological marvels in the alien spacecraft. Different parts of the Roswell craft were sent to various defense companies who reverse engineered their properties. This engineering feat eventually led to a number of breakthroughs. Among them were integrated circuitry, night vision equipment, the laser, particle beams, and fiber optics. The contractors were told that the parts were stolen from Russia. He also claims that the government cover-up was not only to hide the truth of extraterrestrial intelligence from the public, but also to allow the time needed for the reverse engineering process to be protected from foreign countries, especially the Russians. In his book, Corso stated, "Nobody wanted to come in second place in the silent, unacknowledged alien technology development race going on at the Pentagon, as each service quietly pursued its version of a secret Roswell weapon." Corso's first breakthrough into the vast above top secret box of goodies came when he was stationed at Fort Riley in Kansas in July of 1947. He had become curious about a cache of sealed boxes which were being stored in a highly secured area of the base. Not being able to hold back his desire to look into the secrets inside, he took a light and pried open one of the boxes. He was shocked at what he saw. The contents, enclosed in a thick glass container, were submerged in a thick light blue liquid. At first I thought it was a dead child they were shipping somewhere, but this was no child. It was a 4-foot human-shaped figure with arms, bizarre-looking 4-fingered hands, I didn't see a thumb, thin legs and feet, and an oversized incandescent light bulb-shaped head that looked like it was floating over a balloon gondola for a chin. Although some investigators reject Corso's claims, there can be no doubt about his credentials. After joining the Army in 1947, he served in Army intelligence in Europe. During the Korean War, he continued his intelligence duties under General Douglas MacArthur. He rounded out an impressive resume with 4 years on President Dwight Eisenhower's national security staff. In 1953, President Harry Truman gave up the Oval Office and passed the reins of power to his successor, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, Ike. It appears that Truman also gave Ike a pretty hefty file concerning a top-secret project called Majestic 12 that Truman established by classified executive order. Majestic 12 consisted of a group of scientists, military personnel, and other government officials who all worked together to understand and communicate with UFOs and extraterrestrial ETs. President Eisenhower was extremely interested in UFOs and ETs. There is evidence that he met with ETs secretly at least 3 times. Once at Edwards Air Force Base in California and twice at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. Since the Eisenhower meetings, other instances of UFOs landing at or near Holloman Air Force Base have been reported. President Eisenhower, who had been a 5-star Army general, always had a strong belief in life on other planets. In February of 1954, he was spending several days in Palm Springs on vacation. He disappeared for several hours one Sunday afternoon and even missed a scheduled public dinner. He was not seen again until late the following morning. The press questioned Ike's whereabouts, so the White House press secretary told them that Ike had chipped a tooth and gone to see a dentist. Even at that time, rumors were that he was visiting ETs at nearby Edwards Air Force Base. The dentist story falls apart upon close inspection. Washington Post staff writer Peter Carlson denies the story of the chipped tooth and calls it a cover-up. The Eisenhower Presidential Library has detailed reports of all Eisenhower's medical and dental records. There is no reference to a broken or chipped tooth or dentist visit related to the Palm Springs visit. The library also has copies of acknowledgments that were sent to everyone Eisenhower had contact with while in Palm Springs. There were no records of people who met the airplane, people who sent flowers, the minister who gave the sermon at the Sunday service he attended, and others who played minor roles. But there is no proof of a note sent to a dentist. Years later, the dentist's widow said she had no recollection of ever being told by her husband that he had done dental work on the President of the United States. William Cooper, who was on the Naval Intelligence Briefing Team and had access to classified documents, is a credible witness. His review of those documents revealed that ETs had had contact with Earth. They had warned that the Earth was on a path of self-destruction, and they wanted to meet to help officiate a long-lasting peace. The first meeting with the aliens and President Eisenhower occurred at Edwards Air Force Base in February of 1954. Navy Commander Charles L. Suggs reported that his father had attended the meeting between Ike and the ETs. Eisenhower met with 2 Nordic-appearing blue-eyed ETs. A third one stood near the door as a lookout. The discussions were polite. Eisenhower wanted to officiate a treaty with the aliens, but was unwilling to agree to their demand that we cease testing nuclear weapons. The aliens left with no treaty in place, but returned the next year to Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, not far from the famous Roswell alien crash, for a subsequent meeting with Eisenhower. There is a corroborating story to the ET meeting with Ike at Edwards Air Force Base. The accuracy of the story is difficult to confirm, though. A man named Gerald Light wrote a letter in April of 1954 claiming to have been an eyewitness to the Edwards Air Force Base meeting between Eisenhower and the ETs. Light provided details such as watching Air Force officials studying 5 aircraft with the permission of their alien owners. Some questioned the credibility of Light's report, since he was known to have a love of the occult and claimed to be clairvoyant. But others, like Meade Land, the former director of Borderland Sciences Research Foundation, confirms and believes Light did know firsthand what occurred. There were several eyewitness reports of a second meeting between Ike and ETs at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, which is only about 120 miles from the well-known Roswell incident. The reports are more detailed than the ones provided for the Edwards Air Force Base meeting. In February 1955, approximately 300 people saw Air Force One land at Holloman Air Force Base and taxi back out to the end of the runway. Shortly after the plane landed, the pilot instructed the tower to turn off all radar while the president's plane was on the tarmac. Shortly after Air Force One landed and the radar was turned off, 3 round objects were seen in the sky. One landed about 200 feet in front of Air Force One. Another hovered over the area as though keeping watch, and a third one disappeared from visibility. A man, presumed to be Eisenhower, descended the steps of Air Force One. He was seen shaking hands with a being at the door of the saucer, then entered the unusual saucer-shaped aircraft. Ike was in the saucer for about 45 minutes. When he left, he was not wearing a hat and was clearly visible to many observers. All witnesses recognized him as President Eisenhower. The respected author and former Pentagon consultant Timothy Good came forward in 2012 to talk about Ike's meeting with ETs. Good discussed the purpose of those meetings. The upshot is that these particular extraterrestrials, like many other ETs, apparently wanted peace. They were trying to negotiate some sort of positive settlement for Earth's problems. Evidence indicate that they wanted the U.S. to discontinue testing nuclear weapons. At first, they apparently wanted the public to be told about their existence. In the final treaty, they seemingly had changed their minds and wanted to remain secret. Ultimately, Eisenhower signed a treaty with an alien race called the Alien Greys. The terms of the treaty are reported to have been: we would not be involved in their affairs and they would not become involved in ours. They would help us with developing our technology. They would not make a treaty with any other nation on Earth. They could abduct humans for various experiments, but had to provide names of all those they abducted to Earth's Majestic 12 Committee. In 1964, 3 UFOs flew into the airspace at Holloman Air Force Base. They were tracked on radar and actually captured on film. One seemed to wobble and eventually landed at the Air Force Base. 3 humanoids with blue-gray complexions dressed in tight-fitting flight suits were met by the Air Force Base commander and 4 other officers. The aliens stayed for several days and their aircraft was purportedly repaired. What was discussed in the meetings is still a mystery. It is also a mystery as to why so many people could have been involved in the meetings, and to date so few people have broken their silence. Through the years, there have been more reports of UFO landings at Holloman Air Force Base. Documentaries have mentioned Holloman Air Force Base as the site of alien landings. A documentary narrated by the legendary Rod Serling, UFOs Past, Present, and Future was produced in 1974. It has a segment on UFO landings at Holloman Air Force Base and the 1955 meeting with Eisenhower. The documentary was nominated for a Golden Globe Award as the best documentary of the year. A later documentary, released in 1976, UFOs It Has Begun, also referenced Holloman Air Force Base and the landings that have occurred there. There may have been a time when alien cover-ups were beneficial for the safety of our country and the planet. But is it still necessary in modern times? There is a strong consensus among officials that alien evidence and cover-up are widespread. Will the government ever share with the public all the documents concerning ETs visiting the Earth and making treaties with our government? Why does the government still believe alien visits need to be covered up? Robert Scott Lazar is an American physicist who claims to have been hired in the late 1980s to reverse engineer purported extraterrestrial technology at what he described as a secret site called S4. Lazar alleges that this subsidiary installation is located several miles south of the United States Air Force facility, commonly known as Area 51. Lazar claims he examined an alien craft that ran on an antimatter reactor powered by element 115, which at the time had not been synthesized. He also claims to have read U.S. government briefing documents that described alien involvement in human affairs over the past 10,000 years. Lazar's claims resulted in bringing added public attention to Area 51 and fueling conspiracy theories surrounding its classified activities. He admits that he has no evidence to support his core claim of alien technology. In May of 1989, he appeared in an interview with investigative reporter George Knapp on Las Vegas television station KLAS under the synonym of Dennis and with his face hidden to discuss his purported involvement at S4. Lazar said the S4 facility was adjacent to Papoose Lake, which is located south of the main Area 51 facility at Groom Lake. He claims the site consisted of concealed aircraft hangars built into a mountainside. Lazar said that his job was to help with the reverse engineering of one of 9 flying saucers, which he alleged were extraterrestrial in origin. He claims one of the flying saucers, the one he coined the sport model, was manufactured out of a metallic substance similar in appearance and touch to stainless steel. In a subsequent interview that November, Lazar appeared unmasked and under his own name. Lazar claimed that the propulsion of the studied vehicle was fueled by the chemical element with atomic number 115, or E115, which at the time was provisionally named unimpentium and had not yet been artificially created. It was first synthesized in 2003. He said that the propulsion system relied on a stable isotope of E115, which allegedly generates a gravity wave that allowed the vehicle to fly and to evade visual detection by bending light around it. No stable isotopes of E115 have yet been synthesized. all have proven extremely radioactive, decaying in a few hundredths of a second. In addition, Lazar claimed that during his joining the program, he read briefing documents describing the historical involvement of Earth for the past 10,000 years with extraterrestrial beings described as gray aliens from a planet orbiting the twin binary star system Zeta Reticuli. The Zeta Reticuli system was previously claimed by Barney and Betty Hill as the origins of aliens they allegedly encountered. As of now, no extrasolar planets have been found in the Zeta Reticuli system. Lazar claims to have earned a master's degree in physics from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology and a master's degree in electronic technology from the California Institute of Technology. There are no records of Lazar attending either MIT or Caltech. A 1982 article in the Alamogordo Daily News featured Lazar's jet-powered car, describing him as a physicist at the Los Alamos Meson Physics Facility. However, the Los Alamos National Laboratory has disavowed him. Lazar alleges that his records have been erased. However, skeptics have found this to be implausible. Lazar's story has drawn significant media attention, controversy, supporters, and detractors. Lazar admits he has no evidence to support his core claim of alien technology. One would think that the president would be among the first to know about UFOs and extraterrestrials with regards to their presence on or around Earth. A declassified document in 2016 reveals how the CIA informed then U.S. President Ronald Reagan about the existence of UFOs and aliens visiting Earth. The presidential briefing held at Camp David, Maryland, back in March of 1981 consisted of a few presidential advisors: William Casey, Secretary Weinberger, and an enigmatic person known only as the Caretaker. The meeting was opened by William Casey with a brief introduction to the president regarding the matter. The real briefing was then handed over to the Caretaker, who briefed the president on extraterrestrial matters. In the transcript of the briefing, many things were revealed to Reagan, including information about a hostile race that Reagan was very concerned with. The Caretaker reveals in the meeting that there was proof that aliens have visited Earth for thousands of years. Modern American records of such encounters, however, date back to 1947. During 1947, 2 UFOs had crashed in New Mexico during a storm, and a live alien was recovered along with the debris of one of the spacecraft. The other UFO was not discovered until around 2 years later, when local civilians found the wreckage and several dead aliens before being retrieved by government agencies. The live alien creature was designated EBE-1, or Extraterrestrial Biological Entity 1. The alien and the debris were later transferred to Roswell Army Airfield before being sent to various other locations for further study. With the exception of the eyes, ears, and mouth, the extraterrestrials apparently had very different physiological structures from humans. EBE-1 apparently was a very intelligent life form who managed to pick up the English language relatively quickly and provided a wealth of information to scientists. It was classified as a male creature and was very cooperative with the scientists, often teaching them new knowledge through communications. It passed away peacefully in 1952 due to a supposed natural causes. President Reagan was very concerned during the briefing and asked many questions, which the caretaker answered. Reagan would later address the United Nations, where he speculated publicly about how an alien invasion could bring world peace. On June the 5th, 2004, President Reagan took whatever knowledge he had on MJ-12, UFOs, and aliens to his grave. Certainly, the most contentious issue in the now 66-year history of ufology, the MJ-12 saga, begins with the 1947 alleged crash and recovery of an alien spacecraft outside Roswell, New Mexico. Soon after, President Harry Truman instructed Secretary of Defense James Forrestal to set up Operation Majestic 12, a blue-ribbon, top-secret panel headed by Vannevar Bush, a leading Manhattan Project figure and creator of the Mimics machine, a forerunner of the modern-day computer. Researchers contend that the MJ-12 committee eventually brokered a sit-down between space aliens and President Dwight D. Eisenhower, during which an agreement was reached to enable alien studies of human biology via abductions and animal mutilations in exchange for use of extraterrestrial black technology that would lead to developments like the B-2 stealth bomber. Later, it was suggested that John Kennedy's threat to reveal the MJ-12 alien negotiations was the prime reason for his assassination. Is the whole Area 51 spectacle a smokescreen to distract us from experimental weapons testing? The government dangles a couple of UFOs in front of our noses? All of this seems to have begun in 1947. In that year, a grainy 6-page memo supposedly written by Albert Einstein and Robert Oppenheimer lays out general principles for peacefully interacting with aliens, a clear sign to readers of UFO conspiracy forums and websites that the scientific and government elite had made contact. The next year, the Estimate of the Situation, a military intelligence document from 1948 that concluded that a rash of UFO sightings could only be extraterrestrial in nature. In the 1950s, who would be thanked for the post-World War II boom in communications technology like transistors, lasers, fiber optics, microchips, superconductors, and miracle materials like carbon fiber? According to Philip Corso's book, The Day After Roswell, these were all reverse engineered from alien spacecraft. An anonymous source claiming to be a retired Defense Intelligence Agency official outlined a post-Roswell exchange program that, in 1965, sent 12 Americans from the Nevada test site to the aliens' homeworld known as Serpo. The 8 who returned in 1978 were kept at military installations for 6 years. 1979 brought more information. While the most well-known theories about the American government and UFOs focus on findings from crash landings like the famous Roswell, New Mexico incident, secreted away at sites like Area 51. Researcher Paul Benowitz believes he intercepted communications proving Uncle Sam already collaborates with aliens at the underground Dulles base near the Colorado-New Mexico border. A man named Thomas Edward Costello said in an interview circulating on UFO websites that based on his experience as a security guard at Dulles, a race of reptilian workers performed manual labor under gray alien supervision. Many believe President Reagan's Strategic Defense Initiative, or Star Wars Missile Defense Plan, in the 1980s was developed not to protect against a Soviet nuclear attack, but rather an alien invasion. Depending on whom you ask, the Avery is either a group convened by the Defense Department to research alien weapons and biotechnology, as well as run interference on civilian investigators, or a more sympathetic group of academics and military figures trying to leak that same information to the public. Believers point to publications by suspected Avery members like Christopher C. Green, a former CIA analyst who now researches military applications of neuroscience, which should clearly raise eyebrows. In 1989, Bob Lazar told a Las Vegas TV station that while working at Area 51's S4, he'd come across flying saucers in hangars and an element so heavy it could not be synthesized on Earth. And in 2001, Gary McKinnon, the hacker at the center of an extradition dispute between the UK and the United States, claims that once he broke through flimsy security on military and CASA's computers, he found the Disclosure Project, which collected testimony from air traffic controllers, nuclear missile technicians, and others confirming the existence of UFOs. As far as where the organization is today is anyone's guess. Most assume the project is ongoing and involves some of the best minds our country has to offer, both in science and politics. It is said the project changed its name in 1966 from MJ-12 to Aquarius. One can assume in order to keep the panel secret, its name has probably changed several times since 1947. It is also likely the panel has changed members over time and perhaps even meeting locations. Over the years, new departments would have been added and subtracted from the unit, and today the organization would be heavily funded and secured where no one could ever discover the workings of the entire group completely. Suffice it to say, there would be little to no paper trails leading back to the organization. Most likely, all communication and storage of data would be digitally encrypted. It would not be somewhere that could be hacked or infiltrated by hackers. Even the storage of extraterrestrial physical items, such as flying saucer parts, wreckage, and devices, would be in a secure location only a few had access to, and its location completely hidden. Multiple shell companies could easily hide funding for the organization. One could say that without complete disclosure from within the organization by its exclusive members, you would never know of its existence or any materials the group maintains. In the past, it may have been possible to find documents referring to the group or its existence, but today, that information would be so secure, no hint of it would be available, and it isn't. It makes sense that if a flying saucer did in fact crash somewhere within the United States, such a group would be formed. Dealing with something of that magnitude would require it. Indeed, it would demand it. We live in a secretive society where those in charge operate on the assumption that the general public cannot handle the truth. We see this whenever a new virus emerges or an enemy develops some new weapon system. It's always downplayed, and the media is used to either enhance the fear or diffuse it. In many cases, the media is muffled and never allowed enough information to carry a story. Or a new threat is enhanced to turn attention away from something they don't want you to hear about. It's always done through the ideology they are keeping you safe, be it a government, religion, corporation, or any large organization. The truth is often counter to their agenda. If we are being visited by extraterrestrials, should the public know the truth? How would we handle it? Is secrecy the right and correct way to protect society? Or should we be told? Most feel they can handle the truth. Can you?
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.